they found it at 2.2 ATA. ATA stands for
atmospheres, right?
Atmosphere. Atmosphere is absolute, is what ATA stands for. And so at the 2.2 ATA level, there's an 880% increase in stem cell activation. We've all heard about what stem cells can do. Mm-hmm. They're using stem cells in conjunction with hyperbaric for Parkinson's disease, and they're having remarkable results from that. But with the stem cells traveling through your body, they're looking for things that are damaged, and that's exactly what starts happening. And you can actually feel it. You feel kind of a buzzing sensation, a tingling sensation many times after you get out of the chamber. And that's, I've been told by a number of technicians and doctors, is that's what that is.
See, I never realized that was actually a thing. I had a short hyperbaric treatment years ago when I first started diving, because I was borderline on decompression sickness, and they did it out of precaution. And yeah, I thought that was just something I was feeling. I didn't realize that was kind of a universal thing.
The first dive I ever did, I did it in Tucson with Dr. Carol Henrich's facility. She's a neurologist here in Arizona, been working in this field for many, many years, is extremely dedicated to the veterans, as is the chamber that I went through, run by Lori Klauber, Arizona Hyperbaric Oxygen Therapy. And when I went for my first dive, I was down there for a meeting. We're trying to get a law passed in Arizona for hyperbaric for veterans. And I went for a 2-hour dive. I'd never been in the chamber before, had no idea what was going on. You can't have a watch, can't have a phone in there. Mm-hmm. You can watch TV because there's a TV on the outside of the chamber and on a porthole. But I had no idea how long I'd been there. I started counting the purges. Every 20 minutes they purged down there, so I would count that. When I got out, went to a meeting, about an hour and a half meeting, and as I was leaving, Dr. Hendricks asked me how I was feeling, and I said, to be honest with you, I feel like I'm just tingling all over. It's just buzzing feeling. And she said, wow. And I asked her, is that wow good or wow bad? And she said, no, that's actually something that usually doesn't happen until the 10th or 20th dive, but it sounds to me like the stem cells activated.
That's
and
awesome.
So I started noticing that when I was actually sponsored, because people were calling me up going, we've heard about you. You're a hell of a spokesperson for hyperbaric. When did you do your dives? And I said, I've never been through the chambers. So they said, well, we're going to change that. We'll sponsor you. Because I could never justify sponsoring myself when I knew that a brother or sister needed it more than I did. And so I started mine September 21st and ended November 13th of 2015.
So when we're talking about, this hyperbaric therapy, and again, this has been around for a long time, it's very easy for anybody, even without a medical background, to see the physical benefits of this. And I just posted a little article here about athletes, professional athletes, especially like in the NFL. A lot of these guys have their own little portable hyperbaric tents that they travel with. They're not as effective, obviously, as the full-blown chamber, but it's the same sort of idea, and it's to help them heal and keep their bodies in peak physical condition. But I think it's harder to grasp how this can affect something like TBI and post-traumatic stress, especially the post-traumatic stress, because there's all that misinformation, that confusion. Is it a mental disorder? Is it a physical issue? You know what I mean?
Yes, and with the, a lot of people talk about the PTS as being, well, if you add the D to it, which I never do,
right?
You're talking about a disorder. Now, I always ask the question, was a person, did they have a mental disorder the day before the firefight? No.
Mm-hmm.
But after the firefight, they might have some PTS, post-traumatic stress, going on with them. Now, if the brain is injured, it's very difficult to deal with that trauma. It's very difficult to even, if you're in psychotherapy, many times with PTS, severe PTS, it's actually undiagnosed traumatic brain injury. So if the brain isn't functioning, how can you possibly remember what happened in the psychotherapy session?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point.
It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the whole use with the drugs, I always relate it to, if we know that a traumatic brain injury is a physical injury. Physical injury. Something has happened to the brain. So if we use psychotropic drugs to treat a physical injury, it'd be the same thing as you coming into my office with a broken leg. I gave you a couple scripts for drugs and said, okay, everything's fine. You look at me and go, Dr. Brown, you're a complete moron. How about casting my arm? Don't worry about it. Just take these drugs. You'll be fine.
Right.
Both of those are going to get absolutely, there's no efficacy. There's no positive results from the drug use for those items because you're not dealing with the injury. So if we look at PTS as being traumatic event causing stress, everybody has traumatic events. I won't even tell you about my event that occurred at 12 years old, but my brain was functioning. So my parents and I were able to deal with what happened in a very realistic manner. However, if your brain isn't functioning, as after my traumatic brain injury, I noticed that my anger absolutely came out of nowhere.
Yes.
I had no idea why I was hypervigilant. Mm-hmm. I was angry. I was tired all the time. I had trouble sleeping, had incredibly visual bad dreams.
Mm-hmm.
I had trouble with word searching. I can tell a TBI individual almost immediately because they'll look to the ceiling. They're looking for words. Mm-hmm. Poor judgment. And I found that when my anger would just bubble up, there was nothing that was creating it. There was no catalyst at all.
Yeah, no trigger
I just
event.
got angry.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I go out in my backyard and thinking that if I got away from what might be triggering it, that it would all subside. It didn't. It got worse. And so as I lived with that, I realized, and slowly but surely things started shifting for me and getting better. But what a lot of it was, I was masking it. I was covering up what I was going through. Mm-hmm. And so when I actually came out of the chambers, there's an individual that called me every single day. And she suggested that I write a journal about it to let people know what happens while you're in there and what's happening to me. The first 2 times I did it, I was incredibly sleepy. I was in bed by 8:30 the first night, 9:30 the next night. And then the next day, I was so fired up that I headed straight over to the gym to do a full weight workout and aerobic workout. I was just fired up with energy. What I found out that they had increased, my first dive was at 1.5, then 1.75, and then they put me at 2 for the third dive. They were tracking me to see how I was feeling, and I told them at the early times I was exhausted. Mm-hmm. They put me at 2, and I had so much energy I couldn't believe it. I felt fantastic. So that's where they set from then on I was at 2 to 2.2 atmospheres. Now, claustrophobia, I noticed somebody just mentioned that on mm-hmm. your blog. Keep in mind that this is a common experience for people. It's not just us vets, but a lot of people have that. And these people, the technicians, work with you on that. Now, if you're really bad and you really need the treatment, they can do a light sedative to calm you down. So the advances, what you're going to get out of this far exceeds the claustrophobic feelings. I mean, you're going to have incredible experiences with it. And like you said, no medical treatment is 100% sure. However, oxygen is a definite requirement for the sustaining of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have oxygen.
And what a lot of folks don't realize about oxygen, and I'm talking medical grade oxygen, it is actually classified as a drug. You know, you can't just go down. You can't just go down to the store and pick up an oxygen tank and breathe off of it. You know, as a medic, you know, I had to have a medical reason to administer, you know, oxygen because it's a drug. But you know what's, you know, great about oxygen? It's the only drug I know of that there are no contraindications to.
Right. And the tremendous benefits, if you go to the VA, they'll never script you. They'll never prescribe this at all. They don't believe in it. And my personal feeling, knowing what Israel has been doing with it, we're fighting the FDA and we're fighting the insurance companies. This is off-label treatment. It's not covered by insurance. It's not covered by the VA. But that's what we're doing with Team Veteran, is creating a sustainable funding stream so that we can treat veterans without having to worry about whether or not the VA approves it.
Right, because and that's actually,
you have to understand.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say that the VA and the DoD have been used as the testing grounds, as we know from 1940 on. They've used us as testing grounds for a lot of drugs. The VA is heavily tied to big pharma, and if you can treat a veteran for $6,000 to $10,000 for 40 dives, and the $6,000 is the standard, what you'll hear, anywhere from 100 to 150 a treatment. I'm adding some extra in there for covering cost, living expenses, because once you start the dives, you really need to stay on top of it. You have to do at least one dive a day. You can speed it up by doing 2 dives as long as they're 4 hours apart. So you could do an 8 o'clock and a 2 o'clock dive in one day, and you could speed it up and do it in 30 days versus almost 2 months.
Yes, I mean you're looking at something for less money than continued treatment, whether it's weekly, biweekly, whatever. The cost of medications and the benefits of the treatments. Why is it that the VA isn't funding this? Isn't working with it? Well,
again, it goes back to their protocol. They work with the drugs. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars over the lifespan of this veteran. And if you're treating for a traumatic brain injury, none of those drugs are going to do anything to heal that brain injury. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So you have to wonder, if somebody's taken the Hippocratic Oath, why would they be doing drugs for something where there's no proven efficacy? There's no benefit. Why would they do this? I can't explain it. I have my own feelings about it, why they're doing it. I don't want to get into conspiracies. However, if we rely on the VA and the FDA and the insurance companies to come on board, it's the same thing as waiting for the VA to change. The current VA scandal that's going on started here in Phoenix.
Right.
And not only has it not calmed down, it's worse here in Phoenix than it ever was before. Now Tucson has erupted, Tucson, Arizona. And we hear about stories all across the board about the VA. This isn't the first time this has happened. It happens about every 10 to 15 years. This time what happened is social media. That's the big difference. So all of a sudden, everybody is learning about what's happening at the VA. So a law was passed about VA accountability. What's happened? Nothing. Things have gotten worse. So if we keep relying on the VA or the generosity of the public, there are over 50,000 veteran charities out there. They're all competing for the same donation dollar. Everybody is competing. Heart disease, lung disease, all these, autism, Alzheimer's, these are all competing for those donation dollars. When you tear that dollar up with all these other charities having their slice of it, you get a very, very, very small sliver left over for veteran issues. And then you have 50,000